Now, there is great anticipation ahead of the announcement of President Cyril Ramaphosa's new cabinet and questions over whether he will use the opportunity to take bold decisions in order to bring about economic reform. Let's expand on this. I am joined by Thijs van Zyl, who's the CEO of Everest Wealth. Thijs, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. So you've mentioned that President Cyril Ramaphosa has a significant opportunity to make concrete decisions for economic reform. What specific bold decisions do you believe he should prioritize in his new cabinet appointments?
Yeah, firstly, thank you for having me. And I think, the biggest challenge he might have, and I don't want to put it out as a challenge, I just think, the most important thing he needs to focus on is on these other two positions, not the 28 positions that's actually open, but specifically the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Trade and Industry, and then to make certain as well that these two people are actually compatible, because the compatibility of these two positions are so important for South Africa's economy in the next 5 years. We are so sensitive at this stage. We can see markets has reacted in the last week or so was positive. The rand was actually, gaining strength against the dollar and other currencies as well. So market sentiment is definitely positive towards the South African economy. But President Cyril Ramaphosa must make the right decisions. So if we have a look at Godongwana, yes, great guy, well qualified, good experience. But in the past as well, with Trade and Industry Minister like Imran Patel, we didn't see a lot moving together. So that just tells me there's not a lot of compatibility with those two ministers. And if they don't work together, we're just going to see another 5 years like in the past 5 years. So hopefully we're seeing that we might get different type of ministers that gets appointed in these two promising positions. Let's see and wait.
Let's see and wait. But considering the ANC's likely retention of key economic portfolios, how crucial is it for the Government of National Unity to then balance experience with fresh perspectives from other political parties like the DA, for instance?
Yeah, I think the DA especially is definitely gunning in that they have to aim for the Trade and Industry Minister. And of course, I think the ANC won't walk away from the Financing Minister. But that is something that's positive in my view, because now, again, it's exactly like you say, because then we can start looking at new economic policies, chuck out the old ones that we spent some time on that's not working over the last 50 years, and not by actually going to government with economic policies by gaining political points or, just favoring some people over other people. I think if we're going to get that right in the next cabinet and get going, that's the one thing that we need to do, is to say, let's say to South Africa and to the world, South Africa's open for business, but we need to do it from the right start from now upwards going forward.
So you've also highlighted Dr. Dion George as a potential finance minister from the private sector. What unique qualifications or expertise from the private sector do you believe could really benefit the finance ministry at this critical juncture, if you will?
I think, if we have a look at qualifications is the most important factor. And I think that was one of the biggest things and the frustrations that we've seen in past administrations, not just the Ramaphosa administration, but previous ones as well, is that we don't really get the people appointed in these important positions that's got more than enough experience, they're well qualified, got new ideas, etc. And like, for instance, if we take, the finance ministry, if we take even a portion of it, or even just a commission of it, or whatever the case might be, and we can give it to the private sector, like, for instance, government bonds. Why are we still selling off government bonds? And it's a junk status grey listed government bond. Then we can restructure it in the private sector by saying, okay, let's go to the JSE and let's go and list some other bonds like highway bonds, electricity bonds, Transnet, bonds, all those type of bonds, bring it back to the private sector and stimulating our local exchange when it comes to, listing these companies. And then those funds don't get decided by Ministry of Finance where it's going to go to. It's within that private bond, and then it will be allocated to that private sector, like, for instance, electricity, like, for instance, roads, and for instance, water sanitation, etc. So if you just privatize that type of thing immediately, and then just listen to private sector what they can bring to the table, and not by saying, no, I'm the Minister of Finance, I'm not open to suggestions. You need to be open to suggestions.
But with the DA potentially securing key ministries, how optimistic are you that policy difference between parties can effectively be reconciled to ensure a stable policy framework, especially concerning issues like state-owned enterprises and privatization as well?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're saying, is because the whole thing with GNU is everybody is quite positive about it and everybody is excited about it. But again, we are in a country that has a GDP that is in below 1%. Our debt to GDP is about at 74%. So these parties really don't need just to listen to each other, but they need to sit around the table and make important decisions, not just for themselves as their political parties, but for South Africans and the consumers that is in South Africa. We're struggling with inflation, high interest rates. So this is now the time to come together and say to the guys, listen, we need to actually put apart our differences. Yes, there's always going to be difference. Okay, and there's always going to be a different type of opinion. That's a positive thing in my eyesight. But at least now for the first time, you can negotiate to a point where you can say, okay, but let's implement. And that makes me positive. We can negotiate until we say, let's implement.
But in light of South Africa's pressing challenges, one mentions inequality, unemployment, as well as corruption. How can the new cabinet then best prioritize these issues to achieve rapid but inclusive economic growth?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is the labor force in South Africa is ready. But we don't have that thing that's called that offer and demand. So we definitely have the offer is there and the demand is there, but it's not getting implemented with each other. So we're not making South Africa open to foreign companies to come and put in their industrial companies in South Africa. To say, okay, listen, but we're going to create 2,000 jobs here. We're going to create 5,000 jobs here. And then the most important thing is the youth. The youth is over 60% unemployment. So that even shows you not only is the elderly, willing to work, but it's a huge workforce when it comes to, the youth. And they are looking for jobs. And if you create jobs, then you're making it easier again for the Ministry of Finance to stipulate, I'm creating new taxpayers. So there's more tax revenue. I'm creating, an increase on my GDP. The country's economy is growing, and etc. So everything complements each other. But again, we need now to think outside of the box by saying to countries that is internationally, come to South Africa. We're open for business. We'll give you tax cuts in the first 5 years, the first 10 years, or whatever the case might be. But we're open for business. Come and negotiate with South Africa. Bring your companies to South Africa. And if we can get that right, then we're going to not only squash this 32% unemployment rate, but we're also going to see great positive growth. And I think everybody's excited for that.
So investors are cautiously optimistic, if you will, about stable economic policies under a new unity government. But what specific policy signals from Ramaphosa's cabinet appointments would really reassure investors, but also strengthen business confidence?
I think, most importantly, it's definitely going to be the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Trade and Industry. It's going to be the Minister of Electricity. And of course, if we have a look also at the Minister of Police. So those four elements are going to work, and complement each other directly, because the outside investors are out of South Africa, even, what money that left South Africa, they want to come back to South Africa. But they have to see but these things are changing. So as soon as you can see these things changing, because in the first instance, it's easy for me to say, let's make, South Africa open again for business, for international companies to come in here. But if we don't have infrastructure again, to complement those companies in order to provide, sustainable electricity, provide sustainable water and sanitation, then it's also just a dream. So there's a lot of things that still needs to blend to each other and come in and to make this thing work. So I think those four positions, when it comes to appointments in the next couple of weeks or the next week, we're all waiting in anticipation. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
So you've mentioned urgent reform is needed to address major societal problems. What role do you see the new cabinet playing in accelerating these reforms, particularly in areas like job creation and combating crime?
I think the most important thing in South Africa, and South Africans always misses, I don't think South African misses that, but most, I would say even politicians miss that, is the fact that we have not only to focus on sustainable electricity, we have to focus on this unemployment factor that we have. So in the past, Ramaphosa administration did appoint a Minister of Electricity to actually address this matter of Eskom directly as a ministerial type of position. And they should do the same when it comes to unemployment. So they should definitely look at maybe appointing a Minister of Employment or something like that to work together and to say, but how are we going to fix this unemployment factor that we have in South Africa? because at this stage, it's actually killing South Africa, it's killing our economy. And of course, if you have a look at social impact that it has, on the general public of South Africa, it's devastating, and it can have, dire straight results. And we've seen that in the polls, a few weeks ago, that people don't even want to pitch to the polls anymore because it's just not worth their time. And of course, if you can't provide, results, then these people also, they don't want to go and vote. And I can't be mad at that, because that is just a fact in South Africa that we have a huge unemployment rate. We have a safety issue. We have one of the, if not the highest crime rate in the world. I mean, so we're breaking records, and we have the highest, unemployment rate if you have a look at Africa, it's on a scale as well. So it's not good things. And I think if you directly impact those things, by appointing direct ministers that can actually do the job, it will, the results will come itself.
One aspect that's often overlooked, ethical leadership. How critical is this new cabinet to not only be competent, but also to demonstrate ethical leadership? What impact could ethical lapses in governance, for instance, have on economic recovery efforts?
It's all about what is the agenda. So if we have a look at the minister that we appoint and whatever type of portfolio we give him, it's all going to be about the agenda, what he wants to achieve. And of course, what is the motivation behind that agenda? And are they actually going to, have the results and come to a conclusion and say to themselves, okay, but what happens in failure? To answer you. So who is going to be responsible if you don't do your job? Because we've seen in the past, even if somebody or a minister doesn't perform, it just gets reshuffled to another portfolio. And I just think it shouldn't be anything that's a negotiable factor anymore for the next 5 years in this new government of national unity. If you don't perform, you should be replaced by somebody that can actually do that job and it can perform in that position. And again, it comes with experience, because if you have experience, then you're going to do it better. So you can't have a minister of police, for instance, just as an example, but he doesn't have any policing skills, no background or anything like that. I think that's a major factor for everybody.
But looking ahead, Dace, what benchmarks or indicators will you be watching very closely to assess the success of this new cabinet in achieving its economic goals, but also addressing South Africa's challenges?
I think from my side, personally, and of course the industry that we focus on, which is investments and economic growth. So I'll definitely, watch that and to see what the impact is going to be now in the third and the fourth quarter, starting, and of course next year in the first quarter. And of course to have a look at what the market impacts are going to be over the short run and obviously the long run, the rand dollar and other exchange rates. So those are big factors that will immediately give indications of what is actually happening in the backside. What are these, ministers negotiating, with foreign ministers? What are they negotiating with, foreign investors, fund managers, etc., to come and invest in our infrastructure again? So definitely we're going to see an indication there immediately within the next quarter or two.
Dace, thank you so much for your time. That's Dace van Zyl. He's the CEO of Everest Wealth, sharing his insights on the upcoming cabinet appointments, but also the implications for South Africa's economic future. He's been giving us his point of view.